Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Nice to see you all here. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Happy Advent. Today is the first Sunday of Advent in the Methodist Church. We sort of think about these next 4 weeks as we lean into the coming of Christmas and the birth of life and love and Christ into the world. And so we sort of have these 4 weeks we call Advent. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This morning, we're going to begin our series, which is on joy, and I'm calling it Joy 1.0. We're going to kind of look at joy from an interesting perspective. I hope you find it interesting, and we'll have some fun with it at any rate. And we got some special music for the next 4 Sundays, so it's going to be fun for the next 4 Sundays with some different stuff happening. So we're glad you're all here to kick it off. A couple of announcements. Look on the back of your bulletins, especially if you are a visitor. I wanted to say welcome to you all, and if you see someone next to you while we're saying our passing the peace in a little bit, make sure you say hello to some folks, especially if they look like you haven't seen them before, or if you just have a memory problem. Go ahead and do that anyway. Okay, so coming up this week, I want you to be aware of Tuesday. That's 2 weeks away. Don't think about that. Coming up this week on Tuesday, this week on the 4th, is Beers and Gears. And Austin Patton, our AV guy that we often see in here helping us out, but he's the church AV guy, is also the outdoor ministries guy, also an avid bicyclist, and also a lover of craft beer like myself. And so we got together and decided, well, we're just going to get together. Anybody who's interested on a Tuesday, every now and then, maybe once a month, maybe every couple of months, and we're going to do something called Beer and Gears, and we'll start here at the church, and I believe we're going to meet here at the church at 6:30. 6 o'clock or 6:30. You can find it online. If you go to the website at the church website and look up Beers and Gears, you'll see it there, and it has the exact time. It came down the wire before we got the bulletin. After we got the bulletin, so we didn't get a chance to get it down correct. And then I forgot to ask Austin. I'll text him while the service is going on. We'll find out the exact time. But if you ride bikes at all, even if you just scoot along on a bike, even if you want to bring a tricycle, that's fine too. What we're going to do is just line them up with red lights, green lights, Christmas decorations, put a Santa on the back, and we're going to ride through downtown, head to Main Street, and hit one of the little local craft beer spots there, have a beer, have a burger, have some conversation, and then we may move to 1 or 2 others. We'll keep it simple and light because, after all, we do have to get back to the church, and so we want that to be happening too. But there'll be plenty of lights to keep us safe and plenty of folks, so I hope you'll join us. I'll get you more information on the win. Okay. Hi, Marianne. Nice to see you. I haven't seen Marianne Wilson so long. Good to see you. Yes? It's on this thing. Awesome. Thank you. 6:30 in the other parking lot on the other side of the church. 6:30. Bring your bikes. Join us. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's beginner level only, so don't worry about anything if you don't ride very often. Okay, enough said on that. And this morning we have a special guest as well. We have John Fortman here. Everybody say hello to John Fortman. Y'all remember John Fortman because John Fortman was our drummer for years and years and years, and then he had a work schedule, a whole different work set up, and so things got all changed up, and he had to resign from that. But he didn't resign from something that Brad and I dreamt up, which was that John has been so talented. When I first met John, which was probably 13 years ago or so, and it was at one of the first 11/11s, we were over in Wesley Hall, and I heard this music. John was just playing keyboard and just some background stuff, and kind of quiet in John's inimitable way. Just kind of a genius in quiet. And I heard this music playing over the sound system that was just stunningly beautiful. Orchestration, all sorts of layers. And at one point I went back and I asked somebody, whose music is that? And they said, oh, that's John Fortman's music. And I discovered that John Fortman is this amazing composer in addition to being a multi-talented musician and artist. And so he's going to premiere an adaptation of a song that he's had for a while that the band's going to do called The Calling, and it fits so perfectly with what we're doing today as we think of Isaiah's text and clearing a path for joy, making way for this new idea of the kingdom of God. So we're going to do his premiere of that. He adapted it specifically for the band today because it's normally multi-orchestration. So we're glad to have you, John. Thanks for doing that. Okay, I think that's enough of our announcements. Good to have you all here this morning. Let's begin with our welcome candle.
Hello? Okay. Hey, I'm Bronson Davis, and I'm delighted you're all here. I was here about a half an hour ago, and there was nobody in the room. And I thought, I'm going to have a hard time doing this welcome candle with nobody here. So I'm glad you're here. So here we go. It's at the bottom of the page, called the welcome candle. We come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come yet again.
Sun's up, looks okay, the world survives to another day. And I'm thinking about eternity, some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, yeah. Had another dream about lions at the door. They were half as frightening as they were before. And I'm thinking about eternity, some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. Walls, windows, trees, waves coming through, and you being me, I'll be in you, together in eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, yeah, yeah. Up among the firs where it smells so sweet, or down in the valley where the river used to be. I got my mind on eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, and I'm wondering where the lions are. Well, I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. Well, I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. Huge shore flying boat rises off a lake. 1,000-year-old petroglyphs doing a double take, pointing a finger at eternity. I'm sitting in the middle of some ecstasy. Young men marching, helmets shining in the sun, polished and precise like the brain behind the gun. They got thinking about eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me. Oh, and I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. Raiders on the road, on the surface of the bay. One of these days they're gonna sail away. Gonna sail into eternity. Got an ecstasy, got a hold on me, yeah. And I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. I'm wondering where the lions are. And I'm wondering where the lions are. Yes, I'm wondering where the lions are. Yeah, Bruce Coburn.
Let's pray. Holy One, we're happy to be here after what Thanksgiving was and was not. We're happy again to see each other, and we're grateful for this rhythm in our lives, these Sunday mornings when we see each other, laugh and smile and hug and listen for a word or two or three that may challenge us or inspire us or require more conversation. We give thanks for all of this. We give thanks for the things that have brought us to this point in time, the good things and the things that we have survived and are surviving. And we're grateful for the way that in the wondrous way that life sometimes works, we all found each other. So here we are, and here you are. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sharm. You were following the plan. I was not. Folks, we are going to stand now and get back on schedule. We're going to sing a song together. Would you please join us? It's a good old solid hymn. And don't you know it's also time to bring your offering to the table? Come on. Sing with us now. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hey. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Let's go. Down the clouds of sin and sadness, drive our fear and doubt away. Ever of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. All thy works, let's hit it. All thy works rejoice around thee. Earth and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and angels sing around thee. Center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, hill and mountain, flowering meadow, flashing sea. Chanting bird and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice. Hey! Come on, mortals. Mortals, join the mighty chorus, which the morning stars began. Trumpet night is waiting on us, riding all with bearded span. Ever singing, march we on, victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music leads us onward in the triumph song of life. Let's go! Rock, man! Take a moment and offer one another a sign of peace, would you please? That's a puffy coat. Like Richard Nixon.
Good morning. One Winter Afternoon by E.E. Cummings. One winter afternoon, at the magical hour when is becomes if, a bespangled clown standing on 8th Street handed me a flower. Nobody, it's safe to say, observed him but myself. And why? Because without any doubt, he was whatever, first and last, most people fear most. A mystery for which I have no word except alive. That is completely alert and miraculously whole. With not merely a mind and a heart, but unquestionably a soul, by no means funereally hilarious or otherwise democratic, but essentially poetic or ethereally serious. A fine, not a coarse clown, no mob, but a person. And while never saying a word, who was anything but dumb, since the silence of himself sang like a bird. Most people have been heard screaming for international measures that render hell rational. I think heaven, somebody's crazy enough to give me a daisy.
Love and faith and songs we made don't always say what hearts can pray, but once in time our souls may find a moment's fleeting path to follow.
Journey song with roads unknown become the path to lead us home,
Where wondrous light is born at night, as souls search through the dark to find the light. Love and faith and songs we made don't always say what hearts can pray, but once in time our souls may find a moment's fleeting path to follow home.
John, that was beautiful. Thank you. This is our Kairos moment. If you're visiting with us, that means we're going to stop and breathe together right now. Just recognize the sacredness of a single moment in time, a time between what has happened and what may happen yet. And so I invite you just to get comfortable, get ready to take some deep breaths. Make sure to put shoulders over hips so there's lots of room for the air to flow. And we'll just sit together and take 4 or 5 breaths. Just pay attention to your breath, to the rhythm of your breathing. When you do this, it's okay if you get distracted. Just come back to your breath. So we praise many things in life. Right now we praise breath and life. Amen.
I've been in several stores lately, as have many of you, I'm sure. And have you noticed something? What have you noticed in the stores lately? Christmas. Everybody's getting ready for Christmas, right? Tom's told us this is the first Sunday of Advent, so we're getting ready for Christmas. The prophet Isaiah was speaking on behalf of the Holy One and telling the people to get ready. A voice is crying out, "Clear the Lord's way in the desert. Make a level highway in the wilderness for our God. Every valley will be raised up, and every mountain and hill will be flattened. Uneven ground will become level, and rough terrain a built plain. The Lord's glory will appear, and all humanity will see it together. The Lord's mouth has commanded it."
Thank you, George. This idea of the prophet Isaiah. So already we've heard several prophets. We've heard John. John, thank you again. I know John has been having some issues with the back and such, and I know it's hard to sit for long periods, but we so appreciate John's work with the song. Yes. And if I didn't tell you this, I mean, he'll be... Oh, he's back. If I didn't tell you this, he's going to continue to create things and compose things for us from time to time as sort of a resident artist, so we're very fortunate. But already we've heard sort of this prophetic voice, right? In this song called The Calling, we've already heard this kind of prophetic voice to us. And then in E.E. Cummings' poem, the image of this clown beside the road who's just handing out a daisy in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of all the opinions and all of the pessimism or the negativity or the dreams. Amidst all of that chaos, there's this clown just handing out daisies. How heavenly that voice is that calls out in the midst. So we have these prophets, and so I'm going to speak about this idea of what calls us to joy, what calls you to clear a path, what in your life calls you. How do you experience joy? And what is joy? Is joy simply that feeling of elation, that feeling of happiness, that feeling that everything is fine in the world? But I want to suggest to you that joy is something completely different. It has nothing to do with, well, it can be happiness. You can have happiness on account of joy, but joy is not rooted in happiness. Joy is something else. Joy embraces all of life, all of its ups and its downs, its positives, its negatives. There's something about joy that when we tap into that, our lives move in a completely different way. And so I want to share with you some ideas about that for the next several weeks. And so this morning, as we think about joy and as we think about Isaiah and the voice crying in the wilderness, I'm going to use this word wild to describe who we are called to be in this time, in this part of sort of clearing a path. And I'm using technology a little bit differently. I did this once before. Some of you might remember I did this about a month ago. I saw Rob Bell doing this once when I went to one of his sort of concert sermon kind of things. And it so struck me as kind of a fun way. It'll keep me on track for one thing, so we know that I can get these things done. I also know that I'm going to try to race through these things in 20 minutes or less, so we're going to have some fun with it. But I also found some images to help us along the way, and then I have this technology which I think works. We'll see. Okay. So let's see. Right now we'll go through this. This is what I'm going to cover. This is not everything. Is there something else there that's also, let's see. Nope, that's not it. Whoops, wait a minute. All right, so I'm just going to have to try to remember what the rest of it is because it didn't pick up the whole list. It cut the list short. But let's go through this. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to look at how I start my day. The wilderness. Who do you choose to be? Dyslexic Smellborp. Seeing right. Go think about what that spells. We're all going to die eventually. Going to have some fun with that one. Joy is being wild. The Dalai Lama. And then we're going to talk about loitering. It should be legal. And then interesting roads to joy. And then I'm going to talk about my granddaughter, Molly, and how she makes me. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the wilderness. I think we'll get all of these covered. We'll see how this works. Okay, so here's what you do. Maybe you start your day like I do. You wake up, you drink some water, you have some coffee or tea, you shower, and you're off to your job, or your morning routine begins after that. Maybe it starts with you reading the news, or the news is on the TV in the background, Good Morning America, NPR, or maybe you've got Alexa like Linda and I do, and you start your morning off with, oh, what a beautiful morning, James Taylor playing it, and then Good Morning Alexa, and she gives you all the news for the day in brief little bits, including a word for the day, which is always fun, and a really lousy joke. And then, boom, you're not even out the door. You're hardly down for finished your breakfast when you suddenly realize, having heard the news, you are in the midst of the wilderness. Already you're experiencing life at its scariest. You're getting all the great details about the latest impeachment hearings. You're getting another terror attack in London. Flu cases are on the rise. Or the latest climate crisis news, which says it's even worse than we thought. And so before you're even out the door, off to work, or off to run your errands, you suddenly realize you are in the midst of the wilderness. And it's hard to take it all in, not to mention the other anxieties, the stresses that we feel, our families, our own crises and griefs, our own stresses with the possibilities of making it at work or not making it work or what's due on this day. We have all of these things, and we wake up in the midst of the wilderness. We think of it normally as just another day, and we got to deal with it. But we don't often realize that there are choices that can be made right then and right there. How will we choose to be? I mean, even if we don't intentionally consider it, we are choosing something. Even if we don't consciously do it, we are choosing something. We are making some kind of choice of how we are going to see the day. Will we see it basically as stressful, divisive, wrong, just another day in the melee of our existence? Or will we see it somehow, is it possible to see it somehow as grounded and rooted in joy? We have that choice every day as we make our way through the wilderness. And so it's not too unbelievable to hear this question that you might be asking yourself as you think about your own difficulties, your own challenges, your own griefs, your own losses, and the problems of the world. You might be asking this question: how can one even begin to talk about joy at a time like this? To which Isaiah would say, and perhaps those who followed him, including Jesus, the Dalai Lama, and Gandhi, and Viktor Frankl, and Anne Frank, and Harriet Tubman, and Martin Luther King, all would say this probably if they were here. They would say, how can you not talk about joy, especially at a time like this? And so you wake up in the morning, you have your coffee, you head out to do what it is that you do, and you make a choice, deciding consciously or not how you are going to meet the world. And then you decide, as you're making your way to work, you have to stop off at the grocery store because you're the one bringing snacks for the meeting this morning. And then you open up you go into the grocery store and you see this. And you think to yourself, what choice did he make this morning? Should it be rabbit stew or fox stew? It needs salt. Do you notice he's got a turtle shell right there hanging off the side? You look at this guy and you think, this is an odd character. But he's a friend of mine. His name is Jim Two Crows Wallen. He's a professional storyteller and educator, a professional reenactment educator and performer. Lives up in Missouri. Jim Two Crows Wallen travels all over the country presenting himself in these characters, here as a typical 1600s, 17th century mountain man. Interesting thing that day was he said he didn't have a gig. But then this is him at this time, at this time of year. Go back, yeah. So that's him this time of year. I find what's interesting sometimes as we make choices, as we think about our day, one of the things in finding joy has to do with how we find our authentic voice and who we are. And so we make these kinds of choices, and maybe you're like Norma, and you wake up and you're headed straight to work at the HEB this past week because it was Thanksgiving, and when you get there, you suddenly notice as you clock in, the manager is there in the break room with all the others from your work area, and there's this tension, you can feel it, it's palpable. You walk in, and then they suddenly look at you, and the manager looks at you and says, "What about you, Norma? Are you willing to do this?" She has no idea what they're talking about. But Norma's a can-do kind of person. She's always up for any kind of experience because she knows there's always something to learn in every moment. And she knows that Jordan, who was supposed to do it's new, and he decided not to be there. But what the heck? Maybe it wasn't related to what she was going to be asked to do. And so there she is. You can even see on the left it says turkey. Norma knows just who she is. But from the smile, you can see that Norma's fine with who she is. And she says, it's like she could say to you, "Don't mess with the turkey. I got a walkie-talkie." And you know that after she's done it with that attitude, you know that the boss afterwards is looking at her and saying, "Norma, you absolutely nailed it." And Norma's saying, "What's the next costume, right? What's the next gig I get to do?" Or maybe you're like this guy in New York, and you're trying to make your way to the Millennium Falcon, right? Star Wars reference, right? So you're trying to make your way there, but you know what's interesting about this guy? He's in New York. It's not Hollywood. But what's really interesting about this guy is he's walking as if he's not wearing a costume. He doesn't even know it. Maybe you're this guy. Maybe you're Bob on the first day at the job, but you're working for the city, so you think, how hard can it be? And the guy, your supervisor, comes over and says, "Bob, you had one job to do." But he feels sympathetic, and so what he does is he says, "You got another chance." But here's what you realize. I mean, to be fair, he's like, who hasn't wanted to warn people of bum-ups, right? You know. So I was 5 years into college, 2 years into a master's degree, when I decided to do some psychological testing. And I discovered after that long in college and even in graduate study why I read so slow, why I verbally processed things so challenging, and why stories made so much sense to me because they were visual, and my mind's oriented towards visual. But I'm also slightly dyslexic. I have a mild form of dyslexia. And so text, which I'm doing right now, can be the most nightmarish experience for me because I can't see words in line. And even though conventional wisdom says things follow suit, and in class you learned things follow suit, and in raising up your kids they learned things follow suit. A plus B equals C. This is how you get things done. But in reality, life isn't conventional, right? In reality, we know that life is crazy. It's illogical. It's unpredictable. It's mysterious. Things are thrown at you. How do you adjust? Well, some of us figure it out and we adjust eventually and then discover, oh, that's why I was slightly dyslexic. And in my first real job, I realized this because authenticity also has to do with recognizing not just who you are, but how you work. And that's a real challenge for a lot of us because we live in a world that's more conventional than non-conventional. It's more oriented around A plus B equals C, logical order. The sequel follows follows the first movie, and then there'll be another sequel. Or the book has a movie to follow it. And in my first real job, I was excited because it had all the things that you're supposed to have, right? I was 28 years old. I got my first real job. I was an associate pastor at University United Methodist Church. I'd been working here as a youth pastor, but I was also going to school full time. And so, yeah, it was a real job. But this one was my first real job. I got a job. I got an office. I'm working as the associate pastor. I got one of those phones that has the yellow buttons that you can push and put somebody on hold forever. And then I got a suit, and a kid came with it. That's really me with the Tom Selleck mustache. Yeah, pretty sad. And that's Tim. He's back here somewhere. He didn't know I was going to show that. But I got this first job, and here you can see this kid in the suit, basically, and I'm really trying to fit in. And you know what happens to the associate pastor? They get the job that the other pastors who've been there a while didn't want to do, or that the senior pastor is too busy to do. And so I get to go to the jail to visit the folks that are in the jails, or I get to go to the hospital to visit somebody who's dying from some kind of disease. And for the first time, I'm standing there. I have no clue what to say. George knows what I'm talking about here. And Mary Ellen knows, but Mary Ellen's skilled at this now. She's been trained at this. Oh, it's always new, isn't it? It's new every day. That's right. You go to these places, and, you go to the prison, and you get ready to do a prison visit, and then they put you in this room, and then you sit down with this person, and then this person says to you, the guard says to you, you'll be in here, and you'll be talking to them, and I'm saying, where will you be? And they're saying, well, we'll be out there watching on the monitor down the hall. And if there's a problem, they say, we'll see it down the hall. Going to a funeral home, and what do you do at the funeral home? I mean, so many things you're thrown at, so many challenges that I had no idea. I'd worked with heroin addicts at the methadone clinic, but this was something completely different because I was a minister. I'm supposed to have answers. I'm supposed to know how to fix things because conventional wisdom says A plus B equals C. I should have some kind of answer. But authentically, that wasn't right. That didn't fit for me. And I remember reading this book as I was in seminary, but it came all too clear for me as I was working in the pastorate. And it's this book of non-conventional, unconventional wisdom, alternative wisdom. It's called Ecclesiastes. Many of you know the book. Vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. It has a real big start at the beginning there. All is useless. It's all worthless. We're all going to die. Don't read this at bedtime. I recommend you read it, but read it in the daytime, in the bright sun, beside a stream. Read it beside the lapping ocean waters on the beach, but don't read it before you go to bed. So here's a picture of the book. This is how it opens up. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Everything is vanity. You spend your life working, laboring, and what do you have to show for it? Generations come, generations go, but the world stays the same. It just goes on and on and on. Sun rises, sun goes down. It starts right back where it wearily started before. Everything leads to weariness. Weariness too great for words. Our eyes can never see enough to be satisfied. Our ears can never hear enough to be wise. What has happened before will happen again. What's been done before will be done again. There's nothing new in the world. Look, they say, there's something new. But no, it's all happened before, even long before we were born. Nobody remembers, nobody will remember. Who in here remembers sugar babies? Yeah, you have to be a certain age, right, to remember sugar babies. Dippity-doo. Chicken sticks? Okay, now we're reaching way back. Nobody will remember what happens. Here's the interesting thing about vanities. Here's the word vanity. This is what the word vanity means. If you look it up, we think of this vanity of vanities as talking about possessions and greed and selfishness and such. It has nothing to do with that. This is the unconventional wisdom that says life is thrown at you no matter what you do, something you try, you can't dodge one thing. And that one thing you can't dodge is death. We're all going to die. It doesn't matter. Vanity, if you look at the Hebrew word, is hevel, H-E-V-E-L, which means very simply this. Can you see that in the back? This is kind of a wasted illustration if you can't see it in the back. This is vanity. All of life. Right there. That's your life. You worked really hard. Sorry. Those boots are awesome. You read Yelp reviews, right? And you read the Yelp review and the guy who says, this was terrible. I waited 10 minutes before I was even served my drinks. You want to go, dude, it's worse than that. You're going to die. I mean, that's the whole thing of Ecclesiastes. It's all about, doesn't matter what you're going to do or how you do it. He says, I've looked at wisdom. I've looked at foolishness. Wisdom's better than foolishness. Light is better than dark. It doesn't matter because it's all going to be dead. You can be the wisest. You can be the most foolish. You're going to die. It goes through this whole thing of this long chapter after chapter of different ways of trying to look at life, and it all ends up the same. We all end up the same. And then he says, so what's the point? Right? And that's what you can do. You can go, what's the point? Or you can go, wait a minute. What is the point? And you realize the point is to enjoy. The point is to enjoy life. The teacher, the preacher, Ecclesiastes says, all of it is, yes, that's true. We're going to die. But we have this life to live. We have this life to enjoy. So here's the word I want to play with you for the next few minutes. Enjoy. What does the word enjoy mean, right? You think it means pleasure. You think it means, well, I want things to make me happy. But that's not what the word enjoy means. The word enjoy is about delight. It is about bringing something to life. It is about inviting. It literally means to lure the light. So if you say, I'm going to go out and enjoy the world, you might wait and you might see what the movie's going to do for me, or you might see what the game's going to do for me, or you might see what the team's going to do for you on the football field. But that's not enjoying. That's literally just passing the time of day. Because to enjoy means you start noticing those boots are amazing. Even if. In this moment, I'm looking here and I'm seeing 3 sets of shoes. And then I was just looking at the shoes. Look around you on the floor, the different shoes that you see. Do you ever notice that, how many different feet there are in this room? It's amazing. And if you look at people, the way we put ourselves together, you're like, what went into that thinking this morning? Right? What went into, you can look at me and go, nothing. Right? I see him, it's the same thing, the pants, the jeans, and the sweater, it's the same thing. But some, it's like, clearly there's a lot that went into it. We make choices how we enter our day. And so I want to talk with you about one important practice. Oh, Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama, real quickly, just to show you. This is a great scene. I heard Rob Bell tell this story, but you could get the book called The Book of Joy, which people are studying here at the church, and we'll be using it from time to time in here. And there it is right there, The Book of Joy. So they got together, they interviewed. You know the Dalai Lama. People talk about how they have someone that hates them, how the show didn't go well. China hates the Dalai Lama. Right? Somebody doesn't like you? China. Millions and millions of people don't like the Dalai Lama. Look at that smile. Desmond Tutu, he's seen the most horrific sights. He's experienced the most horrific sights. He's been a part of that whole truth committee. Thank you, Truth and Reconciliation Committee. He's seen people who were mass murderers go back to the town and ask the town for forgiveness. I mean, he's seen all sorts of things, right? There they are. And what they do is when they first come out, Rob Bell says they do the strangest thing. These 2 profound men start tickling each other. They start punching each other. They start kind of pointing at each other going like, have you put on some weight? And you're thinking to yourself, China hates him. He's seen the worst atrocities in the world. How can he possibly talk about joy? And you realize, how can he possibly not? Because joy embraces all of it. Joy holds everything together. So I want to talk about loitering real quick. Do you know what the word loitering means? I'm going to read it to you really fast. It's really amazing. You know how loitering is illegal, right? Loitering is illegal. You go to the restaurant, you go to the coffee shop, you go to the bookstore, you see the sign on the outside. It says restaurant for patrons only. It says bookstore, patrons enjoyment, please. No loitering, no soliciting. Thanks. And then it says the management, thank you. No public restroom. Here's what loitering means according to the dictionary. To linger in an aimless way. to spend time idly, to walk or move slowly and indolently with frequent stops and pauses, to linger aimlessly in a public space. Here are some synonyms: lag, lollygag, to waste time. As in this kind of practice, they loitered along in the sunshine, stopping at the least excuse. What's so bad about loitering, right? So this is what I want you to do. I want you to practice loitering. In the coming week, I realize we might be running out of time here because I see the band coming up here. In the coming week, I want you to spend some time loitering. What I want you to do is to start noticing things, like this sign at Indian Hills on the way up to Colorado, because this guy, whose name is Vince Rosmerick, local resident in Indian Hills, he's a volunteer at the community center, and he says, you know what, I'm going to redo that sign. And so he made a bigger sign because they asked him to make a bigger sign, and then what do you know, he starts putting puns on it, right? My friend was explaining electricity, and I was like, what? The 3 symptoms of laziness, number 1. Or maybe you're like this guy. So this guy, whose name is, let's see, I've got it. Where is it? Ah, Jim Bolin. Jim Bolin, lifetime resident of Casey, Illinois. You've ever been to Casey, Illinois? Drive through Casey. Lynn and I are coming home from Michigan. Sign on the highway on the side said, Casey, 12 of the largest things in the world and 25 really big things. And Linda says, well, we got to go. And I said, but we're not going to be at home on time. And she said, well, we're all going to die. She loves to remind me of that because I have that We Croak app on my phone, and it always says that 5 times a day you're going to die. So anyway, so you drive in there, and guess what? Jim is there, and Jim Bolin is also there most times. And when you start looking around at things, he built this with the help of his crew because he owns the local lumber yard. And he was thinking to himself, nobody knows where Casey is, and this town's the town I grew up in, and I think it's really special. And so he goes to the council. You know, he goes to the city council. And you can imagine this conversation. I want to bring some attention to the town. What have you got in mind? I'm going to build really big things. Like what? Like a giant rocking chair. Like a huge knitting needle. Like a giant golf tee. There are 12 enormously large things like this rocking chair, which is about 45, 50 feet tall. And now the town is on the map, and people come. Joy embraces everything. Joy says, I wonder what's possible in this moment. Joy says, things might look dark. Things might look gloomy. But like this painting from Clara, our sound person, our AV person back there. I loved it because I looked at it, and I thought to myself, it looks so melancholic. And then I looked back at it a few weeks later, and I noticed the eyes. Do you notice the eyes? The eyes see something. The heart, the chest, whatever there's something that's emanating. She sees something. What do you see in spite of what's going on? What do you look for in spite of what's going on? Joy embraces everything. Joy says you just need to pay attention, and you need to notice. You need to find delight and bring it out of the moment. Notice how well people put on their shoes. Notice how well the room was arranged when you first got here. Notice that there are rosemary bushes in the back, because rosemary, if you smell, actually makes you smarter. I want to see you all take a sniff on your way out. It actually enlightens your memory. It actually releases dopamine in your brain. Who knew? Delight is finding joy in the moment. So, last thing here before we end. Molly and I were singing songs at night. I always sing to my granddaughter, Molly, when she's over. And I'm singing to her, and it was Halloween. And I said to her, well, it was before Halloween, actually. But I said to her, Molly, do you realize, and she's 6, almost 7. I said, Molly, you need to go on to bed. So she says, no, I want another song. I said, Molly, you need to go to bed. She said, sing me another song. It just goes on and on and on. I said, sometime you're going to be 21 or 22. You're going to look back and you're going to think, man, I dragged my Oma and my Daddo into the late hours so that they would do whatever I asked them to do. And you're going to feel real sympathy for what you asked us and made us do. And she looked at me and she said, but Daddo, I'm 6. I'm here right now. And I thought, that's right. So when she said, take a picture of us at Halloween, and I took off my mask and I said, this is better, she said, no, it's not. It's better with the mask on. Ross Gay says that we all live in this wilderness of what Ecclesiastes speak of. Ross Gay, the essayist, he says we all live in this wilderness. We all are surrounded by this wilderness. It's the simplest of wildernesses. If it's not simply that we're all going to die, we could go around and ask every one of us. And at some point in our life, if not, we will have experienced some profound difficulty. Every one of us, in every moment, at every time, somewhere, somehow, we've all experienced it. Everyone you meet, we share this wilderness with one another. And as John's song said, we make paths together when we remember to bring our wildernesses together. And in that process, to start finding the joy that holds it all in place. Amen.
Hold on to me as we go, as we roll down this unfamiliar road. Although this fate is stringing us along, just know you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, your loving clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. The trouble in might track you down. You get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home. Hey! Settle down, get rolling clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. The trouble, it might track you down. You get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home.
We are so fortunate, right? We just got a beautiful band. That's so awesome.
And Doxy's back after a month.
Doxy's back, yeah.
A month.
So So this is our blessing together. Let's stand. Let's stand. I don't know if you stand, you may not be able to see this, but you make your way in the world, okay? It's all right. It's okay. All we are is, that's it, right? That's it. But we have this. We have this. We have this moment. We have this instant. We have this opportunity. The voice crying in the wilderness. We're the ones. Clear the path. Make way for delight. Loiter. Linger. Notice. We'll bring joy up from the very surface of life itself. Amen.